today we're going to be looking at the worldwide cultural phenomenon of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, or Sorcerer's Stone if you're American and wrong. Now, a little background about this. My grandfather bought the first two Harry Potter books for me in the summer of 1998, pretty much just before the series really exploded. And basically since then I have been waiting eagerly for the conclusion of this series, which is, I've got to say, 13 very long years. Now, although I do count the games as well, so for me the series won't really be over until the release of Lego Harry Potter, whenever it's getting released. Basically, the last movie is going to be the big conclusion. See, in this time I've read every book, I've played every game, I've watched every movie, I've debated endlessly on TV tropes, the specific genetic makeup of wizards and muggles. I've put forward theories on hallows, on wizards, on wands, on everything and anything. And, I am a Potter fan, I have been since I was young. And so my reviews are pretty much slanted towards that viewpoint. So the first movie begins, and as an 11-year-old cinema goer at the time, I was already hooked by the majestic score, which is really courtesy of John Williams here doing his absolute level best, and this really is a fantastic score. And it fades into a slightly different opening from the book, because instead of spending some time with the Dursleys at number 4 Privet Drive, we cut straight to Dumbledore arriving. Dumbledore here played by the late and great Richard Harris. He draws a strange lighter contraption and puts out all the lights on Privet Drive. So Professor McGonagall joins him in human form, and we see exactly how awesome these movies are going to be. I mean, the effects are, right now, really quite subtle and understated, but that shadow changing is still fantastic to see. So Dumbledore and McGonagall have an exposition-filled conversation, and it's about as natural as the one from the books, but I can't blame the movie for that. And Hagrid arrives on a gigantic motorcycle. Now, from an adult standpoint, this is pretty impressive because of the effects and how much it looks like there honestly is like an 8-foot-tall man there. And from a child's perspective, it's Hagrid. You've just seen Hagrid on screen, fully realised. He's there, he's a thing. And really, this was the great strength of especially the first two films, that they didn't skimp on the details. The films often really were just word for word from the books, and almost shot for shot, and it was definitely something they needed to set the tone, because whenever a series is adapted from a medium to another one, the crucial element to maintain is the feel of it, because without the feel of it, everything will feel slightly off, even if it's the exact same words. So we get more exposition, and we see Harry himself, iconic scarf flashing to begin the opening titles. We go back to an older Harry lying in his cupboard under the stairs. Now, most of the following scenes are really cut down versions from the book, and the book spent nearly half its length before we even get to Diagon Alley. So, and the movies, of course, don't have a lot of the description to do. They can just show us a character, and we go, oh, right, that's the character. So it is a necessary cut, I think. We see that Dudley is the perfect spoiled brat, because that's all he has to do is say one line, and we know. And we see that his parents are just as mean and curmudgeonly, and we don't need all that description. So we go to the zoo, and Harry starts talking to Snape. We get a nice, a bit illogical snake charming. I mean, seriously, a winking snake? And Dudley gets trapped. Again, the director does a nice job of making it obvious that Harry is doing something, but Harry is still oblivious that it's his own doing. He ends up locked in his cupboard, and we arrive at the mail scene. And again, try and remember this, if you can, the childlike joy of seeing this. I mean, this was one of the big scenes from the trailers that everyone sort of got hyped up over. And, here are the Hogwarts letters there on screen. But we also have one of the problems here of both the book and the film. There is really quite a lot of padding, especially early on. I mean, a lot of it can be argued as world building, but there's a couple of scenes here where all we see is letters arrive, Uncle Vernon disposes of them, everyone gets a bit ooh about it. I mean, it's not really funny, and it's not really necessary for getting the message across. They're just there. The Dursley make a run for it after one of the film's most iconic shots and end up on an island in the middle of nowhere, where we find out that it's Harry's 11th birthday. Now, this is really where the film is much better than the book, because we're 12 minutes in and already we've met Hagrid.
Sorry about that.
Seen magic, and we know that Harry's off to Hogwarts.
You're a wizard, Harry.
Now, in the book, it takes a lot longer to set up just how miserable his life is, and the film manages to do it in much less time. So anyway, Hagrid and Harry have some more exposition about Harry being a wizard, and his parents not really having died in a car crash, and then we're off to Diagon Alley. We get some foreshadowing about various things, and Harry goes to buy his school things. Now, the scene with Draco is quite neatly cut out here and plays later in the movie, and really at this stage, anything that was being changed in the movies was being changed for the better, reshuffling things and blending scenes together to make it flow a lot better. I'll talk about the books a lot more when I actually do a review for them, but I think the changes, especially in Harry Potter 1, are for the better, mostly. I mean, Diagon Alley really is awesome. The tendency nowadays is to be cynical about Harry Potter, but come on, when you were 10, didn't your heart skip a beat when you first saw the bricks move, and inside there was this collection of wizardry and madness that was this world? I mean, we were finally there. We meet some rather thinly veiled stereotypes when we see that Harry is in fact a millionaire, and then we have the very famous scene where Harry breaks things in Ollivander's wand shop along with some creepy exposition from John Hurt, and Harry gets given his wand. 11 inches, holly and phoenix feather, and by the way, mine would be either reed or ash with a unicorn tail hair. Anyone guess why I chose those? More foreshadowing, more exposition about you-know-who, and we cut to King's Cross Station where we meet the Weasleys. Again, this is one of the great moments of casting, especially the Phelps twins. And, I actually met Chris Rankin, who plays Percy, a few times when I was younger, before he even had the role. We see the Hogwarts Express on platform 9 3/4, and then cut to showing it chugging along nicely through the English countryside. Inside, to where Ron Weasley comes to sit in Harry's compartment, and this is one of those really great moments because it's very understated. And these moments are where the first two films really shine. They don't feel the need to have every conversation sound like the actor on the verge of breaking down into tears or screaming out every line. And, this scene just really feels like Harry and Ron are friends now. In comes Hermione Granger looking for Neville's toad in what would become a running gag, but they kind of left it out. And we see Ron get to fail badly at some magic. And all three of the young actors here actually have a pretty good chemistry right off the bat, and I'll get on to that later. And we see a whole lot of establishing character moments for the three of them. I mean honestly.
Holy cricket!
Even made me chuckle at the time. Hagrid is waiting as the train pulls into Hogsmeade Station.
We'll be arriving soon.
Now apparently having the meaning of after night has fallen, and they board the boats. Now, the main problem with these movies is that there's not really much to praise beyond didn't they do a wonderful job, and there's nothing really to criticise besides blimey there's a lot of padding. I mean, I could probably sum up the entire movies by just saying well cast, good effects, fantastic aesthetic, shame about the pacing, and then I'd be done. Speaking of well cast, say hello to Professor McGonagall, one of the best cast characters of the entire movie. We also meet Neville and his toad, and Draco Malfoy, played by the then 14-year-old Tom Felton. I freaking love his performance. I mean, it's like a miniature Alan Rickman. It's just so hammy and over the top. I mean, a child actor should not be this bold and big. I mean, they should just be over the top and angsty. I mean, this is like how Brian Blessed was when he was a teenager, I imagine. Anyway, sorting time and the inclusion of the most ridiculous list in history. How exactly does Weasley go before Potter? I mean, I know that this was done for dramatic purposes and everything, but this has always bugged me, even when I first saw the film. Hermione Granger, Draco Malfoy, where they couldn't put the helm on his head because it would have messed up his greasy hair, Susan Bones, hello cameo by the director's daughter by the way, Ron Weasley, Harry Potter. Come on, at least try and stay consistent with the English language. Oh, and I'd be a Ravenclaw by the way. And now we see the magnificent Alan Rickman as Severus Snape himself. Now apparently when Rowling wrote Snape, she actually had Alan Rickman in mind, so this is perhaps the most appropriate casting of the whole movie, if not the best. Anyway, once the students have been sorted into good, evil, nerds and the rest, and we get some exposition about Snape to make us suspicious of him. The introduction of the ghosts including the marvellous John Cleese, and this is again, it's all about how fantastic it was to see it as a 10-year-old really, because these movies definitely were, more than the other movies, for children to see at the time, not so much their parents. The books still hadn't quite reached the point where they were dark and deadly serious. The fourth one hadn't been out for very long, you've got to remember. So, really, this sense of wonder is what characterises these movies best. Off to bed, we get changey staircase fun times, and we see the fat lady, and I've always preferred this fat lady personally, but I'll bitch about Dawn French later in the Prisoner of Azkaban review. Now, I always wondered how you found out the password if it changed, because they never even mentioned this in the book. Does it get announced on the house notice board? Does McGonagall come around and tell you? Do you have to find out from the prefects? I mean, in my old school, it got announced in an assembly, But since we had assemblies in our individual houses, it was a bit different. Anyway, my nitpicking aside, we have a rather gratuitous shot of Harry looking out the window while petting Hedwig. Hedwig also apparently here not in the owlery, and then we cut to the first day of schooling. Now, this is where the movie really just grinds to a halt. There's very little time spent as they jump from lesson to lesson for no better reason than to introduce the teachers and their specific quirks. I mean, the books, of course, were able to do all of this in a single paragraph. You can introduce 3 in about, 4 lines or something. The movie just ends up looking a bit disjointed, and none of it is really plot or character relevant. I mean, except for Snape's bit.
There will be no foolish wand-waving or silly incantations in this class. As such,
A lot of little sing-song entry here. There will be no foolish wand-waving or silly incantations in this class. It all sounds like the beginning of a song.